What if I told you that a scrap of paper with two words written in Persian, a woman's body with no hands or teeth, and a grainy elevator video that broke the internet all have something in common? These cases tormented investigators for decades. They spawned countless conspiracy theories, destroyed innocent lives, and left families desperate for answers. Police departments threw millions of dollars at leads that went nowhere. Amateur detectives built entire careers around theories that crumbled under scrutiny. Some cases seemed so impossible that authorities quietly accepted they'd never be solved. But here's what nobody saw coming. These aren't just cold cases. They're the mysteries that kept you scrolling at 2 a.m. The ones that made you question everything you thought you knew about forensic science. The stories that had you texting your friends saying, "You have to watch this," while rabbit-holing through Reddit threads until sunrise. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That feeling when you're absolutely convinced you've cracked the code, only to discover you've fallen down the same rabbit hole as thousands before you. The problem wasn't the evidence, it was the technology. For 50, 60, even 70 years, these cases sat in filing cabinets gathering dust. Witnesses died, physical evidence degraded, leads turned cold. Families gave up hope. The perpetrators thought they'd committed the perfect crimes. They were wrong. In the last 3 years alone, breakthrough genetic genealogy has shattered 5 of the most notorious, unsolved mysteries in American history. We're talking about cases that stumped the FBI, baffled forensic experts, and launched 1,000 documentaries. Cases where the victims finally got their names back, where killers who thought they'd escaped justice were exposed decades after their deaths. But here's the twist. The real revelations weren't just about who did it. They were about everything we got wrong along the way. If you love seeing justice served and mysteries solved, you'll want to subscribe, because today we're diving deep into 5 cases that prove the truth is always stranger than fiction. Case 1, Lady of the Dunes, July 26, 1974. 2 teenagers exploring the remote dunes of Race Point Beach in Provincetown made a discovery that would haunt Cape Cod for nearly 50 years. Lying face down on a faded plaid blanket was a woman with auburn hair cascading over a blue bandana. She wore only Wrangler jeans, her upper body completely exposed to the summer sun. But this wasn't a case of someone who'd fallen asleep on the beach. Her skull had been crushed by devastating blunt force trauma. Her neck was nearly severed. Both hands had been completely removed. Several teeth had been extracted with surgical precision. Even her pink-painted toenails couldn't soften the horror of what investigators realized they were dealing with. A calculated attempt to make this woman completely unidentifiable. The killer had gone to extraordinary lengths to erase her identity. No purse, no identification, no jewelry. The clothing labels had been carefully cut away. Whoever did this wanted her to remain nameless forever. Within days, the case exploded across national media. The proximity to Hollywood's summer filming of the blockbuster movie Jaws sparked wild theories that she'd been an extra who'd met with foul play. Amateur sleuths pored over crowd scenes, convinced they'd spotted her face among the beachgoers in the background shots. For decades, the case consumed investigators. Local and state authorities plastered her reconstructed face across newspapers and television broadcasts. They produced multiple facial reconstructions as forensic art evolved. Tips poured in from carnival workers, summer visitors, and fishermen. Every lead meticulously followed, every tip carefully investigated. High-profile false confessions wasted months of precious resources. Self-proclaimed killers emerged from psychiatric facilities and prison cells, desperate for attention, sending investigators on wild goose chases that led absolutely nowhere. The Hollywood connection proved to be another dead end. Despite exhaustive reviews of casting records, crew lists, and background footage, no credible evidence linked her to the movie production. The timing was pure coincidence, but it dominated public attention for years. Forensic experts re-examined the evidence repeatedly. New DNA techniques were applied as they became available. Advanced isotope analysis was performed to determine where she lived. Nothing yielded the breakthrough investigators desperately needed. In 2022, everything changed when the FBI Boston Division partnered with cutting-edge genetic genealogy experts. They exhumed her remains and extracted viable DNA from bone samples that had been carefully preserved for nearly 5 decades. This wasn't traditional DNA matching against criminal databases. This was revolutionary investigative genetic genealogy. Scientists compared single nucleotide polymorphisms from her remains against massive public genealogy databases, where millions of people had voluntarily submitted their genetic profiles for ancestry research. The process was painstaking. Geneticists constructed elaborate family trees, tracing distant cousins and their descendants across multiple generations. They cross-referenced migration patterns, birth records, and marriage certificates from across the country. In October 2022, the breakthrough finally came. The DNA conclusively matched to a network of distant relatives, all pointing to one woman, Ruth Marie Terry of Whitwell, Tennessee. Born in 1936, Ruth had lived a complicated life. She'd given up a son for adoption in 1958 and moved across several states, often living under her maiden name to avoid detection. She'd worked various jobs and struggled with relationships that frequently turned volatile. The most critical discovery was her marriage in February 1974, just 5 months before her death, to a drifter named Guy Rockwell Moldavan. In August 2023, the Cape and Islands District Attorney officially named Guy Rockwell Moldavan as Ruth's killer. Moldavan had died in 2002, making prosecution impossible, but investigators had uncovered his disturbing pattern of violence. He'd previously been linked to the suspicious disappearance of his earlier wife and stepdaughter in 1960. His fraudulent schemes and erratic behavior had drawn law enforcement attention multiple times. Investigators believe he delivered the fatal blow to Ruth's head, methodically removed her identifying features, and dumped her body in the isolated dunes, confident she'd never be found. While justice couldn't be served through prosecution, naming him brought closure to a case that had tormented an entire community for generations. The Lady of the Dunes case teaches us critical lessons about recognizing domestic violence red flags and the vital importance of evidence preservation that enables future breakthroughs. Case 2, Boy in the Box, February 25, 1957. A college student checking his muskrat traps in Fox Chase, Philadelphia, stumbled upon a cardboard box that would become America's most heartbreaking cold case. Inside lay the naked body of a small boy, aged 4 to 6 years old. His hair had been recently and crudely cut, chunks missing, uneven lengths suggesting someone had hacked it off in a hurry. His tiny body bore the unmistakable signs of severe, prolonged neglect. The child was severely malnourished, his ribs protruding through paper-thin skin. Surgical scars crisscrossed his groin and ankle, suggesting medical procedures. His fingernails were perfectly trimmed, an odd detail that would puzzle investigators for decades. Most disturbing of all, there were no vaccination marks on his arms, indicating he'd lived completely outside normal society. The boy had been carefully wrapped in a plaid blanket inside a J.C. Penney bassinet box. Someone had tried to clean his body before disposal, but forensic examination revealed he'd suffered blunt force trauma to his head, the likely cause of death. Philadelphia police launched one of the most extensive missing persons investigations in American history. They printed 400,000 flyers bearing his photograph. The boy became known as America's unknown child, a case that would consume investigators and amateur sleuths for 65 years. The case generated thousands of tips and countless theories, but every lead crumbled under scrutiny. The most persistent theory centered around a woman named Martha, allegedly connected to a nearby foster home. Psychics claimed visions. Investigators pursued reports of mysterious women purchasing children's items. Foster care records were scrutinized. Adoption agencies were contacted across multiple states. Every avenue led to crushing disappointment. False confessions plagued the case. Disturbed individuals seeking attention claim responsibility, wasting precious investigative resources and giving false hope to a public desperate for answers. The internet age brought new problems. Amateur detectives on forums built elaborate theories around the boy's surgical scars, the trimmed fingernails, and the specific location of discovery. Speculation about trafficking rings and ritual abuse consumed online discussions, but none were grounded in credible evidence. For decades, the boy remained in his tiny grave at Ivy Hill Cemetery, his headstone reading simply, America's Unknown Child, February 25, 1957. Regular visitors left flowers and toys, treating him as everyone's lost child. In 2019, the Philadelphia Police Department partnered with Identifinders International and the DNA Doe Project, determined to finally give the boy his name back. They exhumed his remains and extracted DNA from a tooth, genetic material that had survived over 6 decades. The process required cutting-edge techniques. Scientists compared the boy's genetic profile against millions of entries in public genealogy databases. They constructed massive family trees, tracing branches across generations and geographical boundaries. Genealogists worked backwards from distant cousins, mapping births, deaths, marriages, and migrations. They cross-referenced census records, birth certificates, and immigration documents. The work was painstakingly slow. Each potential match required extensive verification. In December 2022, the breakthrough finally arrived. The DNA analysis pointed conclusively to one family, the Zarelli family of West Philadelphia. The boy was Joseph Augustus Zarelli, born January 13, 1953. Joseph had lived just 4 years and 1 month. Records showed he'd been born to parents who struggled with poverty and likely mental health issues. His brief life had been marked by medical problems requiring the surgical procedures that investigators had puzzled over for decades. The discovery sent shockwaves through the true crime community. After 65 years, America's unknown child finally had his identity restored. The truth was both simpler and more tragic than decades of speculation suggested. Joseph hadn't been the victim of trafficking rings or ritual abuse. He was a vulnerable child who'd fallen through society's cracks during an era when child welfare protections were minimal. His parents had struggled with circumstances that overwhelmed their ability to care for him properly. The case wasn't about stranger danger or elaborate criminal conspiracies. It was about a family tragedy that society had failed to prevent. Joseph's story became a stark reminder that the most vulnerable victims are often the ones closest to home, failed by systems designed to protect them. Joseph's case teaches us that child welfare reports save lives. His severe malnourishment and surgical scars without proper medical follow-up should have triggered intervention. If you suspect a child is being harmed, unexplained injuries, chronic hunger, or isolation from normal childhood activities, contact local child protective services immediately. The case also demonstrates why ethical online investigation matters. Decades of Martha speculation and foster home theories wasted investigative resources and spread misinformation. Always cross-check sources and defer to official channels. What other cases do you think genetic genealogy could solve? Let me know in the comments. Your insights might help bring closure to other families still waiting for answers. Case 3, Somerton Man, December 1st, 1948. Dawn was breaking over Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia, when early morning joggers spotted a man slumped against the seawall. He appeared to be sleeping until they got closer. The man was impeccably dressed in a crisp white shirt, perfectly knotted tie, tailored trousers, and polished shoes. Strange attire for someone found on a shoreline. He carried no identification whatsoever. Every single clothing label had been meticulously removed. But the real mystery began when investigators searched his pockets. Tucked away in a tiny hidden pocket was a scrap of paper bearing two words, Tamam shud. The phrase, written in Persian, translates to, "It is finished," the final line of a famous collection of poetry. Forensic examination deepened the puzzle. The man showed no signs of external trauma, yet his spleen was enlarged to 3 times normal size. Internal bleeding in his stomach and liver suggested poisoning, possibly digitalis, but toxicology tests found nothing. His overall health and dental work indicated a well-to-do background, making his complete lack of identification even more baffling. His personal effects read like clues from a spy novel. An unused train ticket to Henley Beach, a used bus ticket from Glenelg, juicy fruit gum, and an Army Club cigarette packet containing the wrong brand of cigarettes inside. That cryptic paper scrap led police to a rare 11th edition copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, discovered months later in a parked car. Inside the book's back cover, investigators found an indecipherable code and a phone number. The number traced to Jessica Jo Thompson, a nurse living nearby. When shown a plaster bust created from the man's features, she reportedly reacted with visible shock, but denied knowing him. This connection fueled decades of speculation about secret affairs and hidden identities. 2 weeks after the body's discovery, a brown suitcase surfaced at Adelaide railway station. Inside were more label-strip clothes, a stencil brush, scissors, a sharpened table knife, and barber wax thread, the same type used to repair his trousers. Labels reading Keen or T-Keen yielded no results. The Cold War era sparked theories of espionage. The mysterious code remained unsolved despite efforts by professional cryptographers and intelligence agencies. Some speculated he was a Soviet spy. Others suggested he was a jilted lover who'd taken his own life. In May 2021, South Australia police finally exhumed the body to obtain DNA samples. Simultaneously, University of Adelaide researcher Derek Abbott and genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick extracted genetic material from hair strands, preserved in the original 1948 plaster death mask. Using advanced genealogical techniques, they constructed a family tree containing over 4,000 members. The process involved comparing DNA profiles against public genealogy databases and tracing genetic markers across multiple generations. By July 2022, all evidence pointed to one man, Carl Charles Webb, a 43-year-old electrical engineer from Melbourne. Webb had separated from his wife sometime in 1947 and simply vanished, his disappearance timeline matching perfectly with the SOMERTON discovery. The genetic evidence was compelling. Webb's family background aligned with the physical characteristics observed in the deceased man. His educational background as an engineer could explain the methodical removal of identifying marks. His marital separation provided potential motive for the elaborate staging of his death. Independent verification seemed to confirm the identification. Webb's life story filled in gaps that had puzzled investigators for decades. His technical skills, his access to chemicals through his profession, and his personal circumstances all aligned with the known facts of the case. Despite overwhelming genetic evidence, neither South Australia Police nor the state coroner has officially confirmed Carl Webb as the SOMERTON man. Critics raise valid concerns about the identification process. Hair samples from 1948 plaster casts can yield degraded DNA prone to contamination. The chain of custody for 74-year-old evidence raises questions about reliability. No personal item directly bears Webb's name, and most critically, the mysterious code remains completely unsolved. Some experts urge patience, arguing that genealogical identifications require official validation through multiple sources. The case demonstrates that even cutting-edge science has limitations when dealing with evidence from another era. The SOMERTON man teaches us that scientific skepticism is essential, even when genetic evidence seems conclusive. Modern genealogical tools are powerful but not infallible. Contamination, degraded samples, and incomplete family records can lead to false matches. This case shows why official confirmation processes exist and why amateur genealogical work, however compelling, requires professional verification. The mystery also reminds us that some secrets may never be fully revealed, no matter how advanced our technology becomes. Case 4, ELISA Lamb, January 26, 2013. 21-year-old ELISA Lamb checked into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, eager to explore the West Coast during her solo travel adventure. The Canadian student from Vancouver had no idea she was about to become the center of one of the internet's most explosive mysteries. The Cecil Hotel carried a dark reputation. Located just a block from Skid Row, it had housed serial killers, witnessed suicides, and attracted a transient population struggling with addiction and mental illness. The building had been partially rebranded as Stay on Main, but guests still shared elevators, hallways, and the rooftop with the hotel's troubled legacy. 5 days later, ELISA vanished. Hotel surveillance captured her final known movements in an elevator, behaving in ways that seemed impossible to explain rationally. The grainy footage showed her pressing multiple buttons rapidly, stepping in and out of the elevator repeatedly, peering cautiously down empty hallways, and gesturing wildly with her arms as if responding to someone invisible. When the LAPD released this elevator footage to the public, it exploded across the internet. Within days, millions had watched ELISA's bizarre final moments. The video became a viral sensation that spawned countless theories about supernatural forces, government conspiracies, and elaborate murder plots. The internet transformed ELISA's tragedy into entertainment. Amateur detectives dissected every frame of the elevator video, claiming to spot demonic possession, mind control, and invisible attackers. Forums exploded with theories linking her death to government experiments, hotel conspiracies, and occult rituals. The speculation reached dangerous extremes when online sleuths targeted innocent people. A Mexican death metal musician who went by Morbid became the focus of a witch hunt simply because he'd stayed at the Cecil around the same time. His real name was posted online, his social media accounts flooded with accusations, and his life turned into a nightmare. Conspiracy theorists connected ELISA's case to everything from the Illuminati to pharmaceutical companies testing mind control drugs. They analyzed her blog posts for hidden messages and claimed the hotel was covering up a murder. The viral nature of the elevator video meant these theories spread faster than facts, reaching millions before investigators could release official findings. The case became a perfect storm of internet hysteria, where entertainment value mattered more than truth. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office ruled ELISA's death an accidental drowning, with bipolar disorder listed as a significant contributing condition. The official findings told a tragic but straightforward story that had nothing to do with supernatural forces or elaborate conspiracies. ELISA had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She was prescribed multiple medications, including lamotrigine and quetiapine, to manage her condition. Toxicology results showed only trace amounts of alcohol in her system, but critically, her medication levels suggested she'd been under-medicated or skipping doses entirely. This medication disruption likely triggered a psychotic episode. Her erratic elevator behavior, pressing buttons frantically, responding to hallucinations, apparent paranoia, were classic symptoms of an acute mental health crisis, not supernatural activity. On February 19th, hotel maintenance workers discovered her body in one of 4 large water tanks on the roof, after guests complained about low water pressure and discolored tap water. The tanks were accessible through a fire escape route that bypassed the locked door and alarm system. The lid was found open, contradicting internet claims that she couldn't have closed it herself. The rooftop was reachable to anyone determined enough to find the fire escape access. No evidence suggested foul play, forced entry, or the elaborate scenarios proposed online. The viral speculation destroyed innocent lives. The musician falsely accused online faced death threats and harassment that drove him to despair. Hotel employees were harassed by conspiracy theorists demanding truth. ELISA's family endured years of people treating their daughter's mental health crisis as entertainment. In 2015, when ELISA's parents sued the hotel for negligence, a judge dismissed the case, finding that standard safety precautions had been met. The Cecil couldn't reasonably prevent someone experiencing a severe psychotic episode from accessing dangerous areas through fire escape routes designed for emergencies. The case shows how viral misinformation can inflict real damage on real people, while the truth gets buried under layers of sensational fiction. ELISA Lamb's tragedy teaches us that mental health conditions require consistent care, especially when traveling alone. Medication routines, safety check-ins, and trusted companions become critically important when far from familiar support systems. More importantly, her case demonstrates why we must approach viral content with healthy skepticism. Seek official reports before accepting sensational theories. Don't participate in online harassment of suspected individuals. Have you ever fallen for a viral mystery that turned out completely different from what the internet claimed? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might help others think more critically about what they see online. Case 5. FENN Treasure. In 2010, Santa Fe art dealer Forrest Fenn published a memoir containing 24 lines of cryptic poetry that would launch the modern world's greatest treasure hunt. Hidden somewhere north of Santa Fe was a bronze chest filled with gold coins, precious gems, and artifacts worth over $2 million. Fenn's motivation stemmed from a cancer diagnosis that made him contemplate mortality. He wanted to inspire adventure, get families outdoors, and create a legacy that would outlive him. His poem contained 9 clues leading to the treasure's location, scattered across the Rocky Mountains from New Mexico to Montana. The hunt captured imaginations worldwide. Families planned vacations around potential clues. Retirees spent life savings chasing references to warm waters halt and no paddle up your creek. Online forums exploded with theories analyzing every word, every punctuation mark, every possible double meaning. What started as one man's whimsical gift to adventure seekers quickly became a cultural phenomenon that attracted hundreds of thousands of searchers to the American wilderness. The treasure hunt's romantic appeal masked a deadly reality. By 2020, at least 5 people had died pursuing Fenn's chest. Searchers fell from cliffs in Yellowstone National Park, drowned in Colorado's rushing rivers, and succumbed to exposure in New Mexico's remote gorges. Park rangers repeatedly warned that the clues didn't require dangerous climbs or risky water crossings. Fenn himself pleaded with hunters to prioritize safety over treasure, but obsession overrode caution. Searchers ignored weather warnings, ventured into hazardous terrain alone, and pushed beyond their physical limits. The hunt consumed lives, relationships, and fortunes. Some searchers quit jobs to hunt full-time. Others depleted retirement accounts funding endless expeditions across 4 states. On June 6, 2020, Forrest Fenn announced the treasure has been found. He shared photographs of himself with the weathered bronze chest, but withheld the location and the finder's identity. 3 months later, he confirmed the discovery occurred in Wyoming. On September 7, 2020, Fenn passed away at age 90, taking many secrets with him. In December 2020, Michigan medical student Jack Stueff revealed himself as the successful treasure hunter. He'd spent 2 years methodically decoding Fenn's poem, focusing on subtle geographic references rather than dramatic interpretations that led others astray. Stueff located the chest along the Madison River in Yellowstone National Park's 9-mile hole area. Freedom of Information Act releases later corroborated his account, showing National Park Service emails discussing potential overvisitation and deliberately redacting GPS coordinates to protect the fragile ecosystem. The treasure's contents were reportedly sold in a private transaction, with the buyer's identity kept confidential, preserving the hunt's spirit of mystery. Forrest Fenn's treasure hunt teaches us that adventure and safety aren't mutually exclusive. They're inseparable. The greatest treasure hunters succeeded by respecting terrain, weather conditions, and personal limitations. They researched thoroughly, prepared meticulously, and never let excitement override judgment. The case also highlights our responsibility as environmental stewards. Sharing exact locations can damage fragile ecosystems that took centuries to develop. Sometimes protecting natural spaces means keeping secrets, even when transparency seems more appealing. Most importantly, FENN's legacy reminds us that the journey often matters more than the destination. The families who bonded while searching, the friendships formed in online communities, and the appreciation for wilderness gained along the way. These treasures couldn't be bought or sold. What connects a woman murdered in 1974, a child abandoned in 1957, a man who died on an Australian beach in 1948, a student who drowned in 2013, and a treasure hidden in 2010? The answer is genetic genealogy, a revolutionary technology that's rewriting the rules of criminal justice. In just the past 5 years, this breakthrough has solved more cold cases than the previous 50 years of traditional forensic work combined. We've watched investigators extract DNA from hair strands preserved in 74-year-old plaster casts, identify victims from tooth fragments, and connect distant cousins across continents to finally give names back to the nameless. But these cases teach us something more profound than just the power of science. Technology has limits. Genetic genealogy gave us Ruth Marie Terry's name, but it couldn't prosecute Guy Moldavin. It identified Joseph Augustus Sorelli, but it couldn't prevent his tragic death decades earlier. Even with Carl Webb's apparent identification as the Somerton man, official confirmation remains elusive because degraded evidence and contamination risks require extraordinary caution. The personal lessons from these cases could save your life or someone you love. Trust science over speculation. ELISA Lamb's death became a viral conspiracy theory that destroyed innocent lives when the real answer was a documented mental health crisis. The internet's appetite for sensational theories can cause real harm to real people. Mental health awareness saves lives. ELISA's medication disruption triggered the psychotic episode that led to her death. If you or someone you know struggles with mental health conditions, maintain consistent treatment, especially when traveling or stressed. Recognize domestic violence red flags. Ruth Marie Terry married Guy Moldavin just 5 months before he killed her. Rapid relationship changes, isolation from family, and a partner's violent history are warning signs that demand immediate intervention. Practice responsible online behavior. Joseph Augustus Zarelli's case was clouded by decades of Martha theories and foster home speculation that wasted investigative resources. Before sharing theories or joining online investigations, verify sources and respect the privacy of potential victims and their families. These aren't just cold cases, they're blueprints for preventing future tragedies. Subscribe for more true crime mysteries, hit that notification bell, and remember, the truth is often stranger and more important than fiction.